Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List Unplugged. I have a very special guest today whom I have been friends with on Letterboxd from the beginning of my reaching out to people that I didn't know, which all of us, I think, can relate to one extent or another. This is Cormac, whose face is not his avatar, which which I originally actually thought it was. Who is it, Cormac? Please tell us.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint that I don't just wear multicolored caps all the time. I wish I could, but no, it's
Mm.
actually it's a British rapper, and he goes by the name of Slow Tie. So that's a rapper from Northampton in England, and I just liked the picture to be honest, and kind of liked the vibe it was throwing off. So I was like, yeah, that's a bit of me. So that's not
Put it
getting,
on there.
yeah,
Ha-
it's not
has that
getting.
been your avatar this entire time?
It hasn't. I've cycled through a few of them, to be honest. That one's been mine for, I want to say, a couple of years now, but I've been on this site. I can't even tell you what year it was. I want to say
Mm.
2015, 2016 is when I stumbled on Letterboxd. Just kind of used it casually for 2 years and some change. I probably just logged, did some liking, read some reviews. It wasn't for a couple of years where actually I ended up using it to write anything. But back then, my picture was actually it was Norman Bates, from
No.
Psycho.
Oh
So
my gosh.
you know the ending of Psycho. Sorry for anyone who's shameful enough to have not seen the end of Psycho yet, but Norman Bates, yeah, that iconic image of him staring down the camera,
At the
sort of,
end.
yeah, sort of grinning into your soul. That was my original picture, but then I thought maybe that doesn't exactly represent
Convey.
who I am or who I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
seen as. So I suppose whenever I started using the site more, I was like, let's pick something a bit more representative of, this guy. So
More embracing, warm, not
yeah,
psychopathic,
yeah, a bit more color in there, maybe, liven things up. Don't
not
scare
scare
anyone
people
away.
off.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, since I've known you, it's always been the avatar that you have now. And I
Yeah.
think I'm almost positive that I found you through Frank Ritz. Um,
Okay.
because I think he always called you King or something. And I remember thinking, well, if Frank likes this guy, he must be great because Frank
Yeah,
only has good taste.
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, Frank's the greatest. Like, I think me and Frank have a very much like mutual sort of this guy is a real one. So, real recognize real kind of vibe going on there. So,
for sure.
yeah, I
He would
definitely,
appreciate that. Yes.
you should definitely hold him up as one of the, you know, bench warmers of taste on that site. So, yeah, go on, Frank.
Yeah, we love you, Frank. I hope
We
that
do.
you're listening. He often will tell me randomly, "Oh, Amy, I'm like 4 episodes behind on your podcast. Sorry." So I'm gonna make sure he listens to this one, Cormac. But all that said, thank you. I'm very honored to be able to talk to you and that you said yes. And Cormac is in Northern Ireland. Yes,
Yes. Um,
yes.
was based out of Belfast until about, let's say, 10 days ago. But as you
Mm.
can see, this is not exactly a house that has been lived in for very long. But yeah, this is very new surroundings, so excuse the whole white roomness of it all. But
Mm.
here we are in
And
the
the ray
good,
of sunshine in your room for those of
yes,
you who are not watching it,
my nice,
just
lovely
listen
halo, very fitting as well.
over your head because you're an angel, Cormac.
Exactly.
Okay, well we're gonna get right into Cormac's hidden gems, which are the craziest ones that I've ever had. This is like a true double feature, like back to back, where they actually directly relate to one another,
Yep.
and it exposed me to something that I had zero familiarity with, like, in any way at all, which is always fun. And thankfully, I liked them both, so that made the experience a lot more enjoyable. So, the first one. Now, tell me if this is correct. I believe the title is Five Elements plural ninjas, but on Letterboxd it's Five Element
Yeah,
ninjas.
I actually
Why is that?
had the same observation whenever I watched it. I watched it yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
just so it was fresh in my mind. And obviously the title card came up, and I was like, wait, something's not right there. But let's
Mm.
just call that a quirk. I don't know, but it definitely is Five Elements Ninjas.
Elements
Yeah,
plural. Five Elements
yeah,
ninjas, 1982, by tell me the director's name, how you pronounce it, Cormac.
yeah. So that's by the Hong Kong King himself, the granddaddy, Chan Che.
Chang Che.
Yeah.
And Cormac, how would you describe this film to someone who hasn't seen it?
Okay, so here's where the hard part starts. How do you even begin to describe it?
We're gonna do
Um,
the hard questions first.
yeah, so this is like a live action Tom and Jerry skit brought to life
Mm.
with guts hanging out of bodies and men getting impaled in half. So maybe consider the cartoon element of, Power Rangers, but
Hmm.
then the goriest, bloodiest, most violent action you've ever dreamed of, and mash them in a blender, and then you've got Five Element Ninjas.
That's an apt description. And Cormac has a gift for uh, writing in such a way that no matter what you're writing about, like, we can feel what you mean. So um, I feel like the descriptors that you use for this are perfect. Like, it's just I even wrote down, like, slapstick, relentless physical combat. It's an irrelevant comedy, in a sense, but then it actually has some uh moving parts, like, heartfelt. It doesn't feel like it's just pure action to me.
Yeah, I would actually love to hear a bit more of what it was that moved you about it, because that's not really um, an aspect of it that I would have ever picked up. But I think you're definitely onto something, because there's more to it than just the action. Like,
Yes.
don't get me wrong, it's very much an action first film. You can kind of forget about everything else
Hmm.
if you want to just leave any sort of narrative stakes to the back of your mind, because that's not really what it's aiming for. It's kind of just like all killer no thriller, or all killer no filler in that sense. But I would love to, hear a line or
The
two of what actually it was that you thought was so moving.
Maybe not moving is the right word, but I felt like the scene with Junko, I don't know if I'm saying that right at all. I feel like I'm like such an American saying that, but the scene where she's trying to seduce him,
Mm,
and this is before she plays the flute. And he's saying, like, that a hero wouldn't do that, and that they would need to wait and go before. That whole thing was just very sweet, and I felt like they took the time to establish this character
yeah,
as someone who had, like, moral fiber. And that, I don't know, I felt like that was unnecessary, but the fact that they had it uh struck me.
yeah, because that's not always a given with these, sort of Hong Kong genre flicks. You don't always get like women
Hmm.
that are even named, or women that are even like given any sort of story to go along with. It's usually just, oh, this is a woman who is going to get rescued, or this is a woman who's going to get assaulted. So like even the fact that they took the time to develop any sort of arc for that character kind of shows that they weren't just going for the standard cookie cutter fare here, which I think you could be said about the whole thing. Um, they really were going for something else here, which shines in every sort of aspect of it. So I think it's kind of cool that you picked up on that actually, because I didn't.
Well, and to be fair, I have been steeped in erotic thrillers lately.
Oh yeah,
And so she did remind me of a femme fatale.
oh yeah,
Uh, and I really love the femme fatale, whether it's an erotic thriller or a noir energy and that sense of agency that she had.
yeah.
And she's kind of badass too. She it felt like, like female ninja. It was just like really cool. Kind of took me back to like Kill Bill almost, that
Mm,
feeling.
yeah,
So I really liked it.
yeah. There's a definite like influence as well, because I feel like was it Kill Bill 2? I feel it has a tribute to Chang-Chi, or was at
Oh,
least has some sort of, um, and like acknowledgement by Tarantino that, this is the guy. So you're definitely onto something there. It's not just, vibes.
I didn't even read about that, Cormac. That was from
Hmm.
my brain.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Mm, I'm catching on. Okay, so in since you're an expert on this and I'm a complete scrub, as the kids say, um, what in like the entire realm is this one a hidden gem because like are you considering this a hidden gem in its own genre, or are you considering this a hidden gem in the vast populace of regardless of genre, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, well, I think if I call this hidden gem within like martial arts cinema, then actual fans of martial arts cinema might like put my head on a stake, because
That's what I figured, yeah,
this is
because it's
yeah,
known.
this is
Yeah,
definitely like a certified classic, and
right, that's what I figured.
it's very much like if you want a Chang-Chi film, this wouldn't be maybe his most popular.
Hmm.
There's the Five Venoms, which would be a bit more well known, maybe.
Hmm.
But I think if you're going for what makes him so great, this is sort of the one to go for, um, because it has it all. It has it all. Um, the guy did nearly 100 films, so you'd be hard pressed to say there's only one that like rises above the
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 rest.
rest. But
Hmm.
this was the one that I saw that I was like, okay, yeah, this is something I could get very heavily addicted to. And then, 2 years, maybe 50 of them later, went back to it yesterday and I was like, okay, yeah, this is why this whole sort of obsession actually kicked off in the first place, which is, a mad feeling to have.
So how would you distinguish it from it? Like if he's made over 100 films or 100
Mm,
films, how would you distinguish this one against them? Like what is it about it? Because I have no comparison point since this was my like introductory film. So what is it about this one that's special comparatively?
this one, I feel, well, this one, it came out towards like the back end of his career. It was quite a late style, as they call it, for Chang Cheh, and it was like towards a sort of time when his normal sort of genre fare. So a lot of his would be cookie cutter, you know, this is a tale of brotherhood and loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
very much like proto John Woo, where it's all about these like revenge tales and men teaming up to, avenge their brother's deaths, and it was all very like copy and paste. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, they very much have like a house style within the Shaw Brothers um sort of cornucopia, where if you like one, you're gonna like them all, because there's a certain um like comfort in knowing that's what you're gonna get every time. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to say I've seen nine or ten of them, and whilst I enjoy the vast majority of them, a lot of them are kind of just. oh, so this is that again, or oh, so this is that but bloodier. Whereas with this one, you do get the sense that it's a sort of reaction to the times in a sense that this sort of cookie cutter, just genre for the sake of genre affair was kind
Mm-hmm.
of going out of style. It was kind of not really where the audience's heart were at anymore. So this was around the time when you had your Jackie Chan, you had your Sammo Hungs. They brought along the sort of um, very much slapstick, very much irreverent comedy. So if you think this is irreverent comedy,
I know, just wait.
you just wait. Um,
I have to also say, Cormac, I don't know if you've ever watched the show, not the film, but the show Avatar: The Last Airbender
I haven't, but
on Nickelodeon.
I seen you referenced it in your review, and I was like, okay,
Yes, because the whole thing about the elements,
yeah,
the five elements ninjas, obviously. So there's like these fire guys, there's these ninjas that are underwater, there's the golden ones who are like channeling the sun or like
mm,
using the rays. So I kept thinking like, oh yeah, this kind of takes me back to the fun of Last Airbender, where you're in different realms and you have different groups of people that are using or harnessing nature in some sort of literal way or just representative way.
yeah. Well, it's very cartoonish, which is
Yeah, that's true too.
yeah, it's part of why I love it. To be honest, it's very like first time I
Mm,
watched it, I was very much struck by how it's like just a kid almost playing with their little toys, just kind of making them duke it out in the most like bloodiest, most creative way possible, which like,
hmm
you know, embrace it, embrace the child within.
It's almost like a circus too, but then everything is choreographed. I felt very gracefully. Like
Yeah,
the action feels uh, almost like a dance
yeah,
in a way. Especially when the kind of Yoda Mr. Miyagi guy shows up, and you've got to have that character, I feel like, who just comes and is like, what are you doing here? Let me train you. You obviously need to grow up and learn some stuff. So that aspect I also liked. There were just a lot of things that it felt familiar to me where I would say,
yeah,
oh, I recognize this motif in other things, but it's unique to see it in that setting, I think.
yeah. I agree. Actually, it's very much, you know, the sort of thing that it feels both influential in a roundabout way,
Mm-hmm.
but also it's pulling from a lot of different, folklore and just mythology that makes it all
Mm-hmm.
feel very a lot grander than it actually is. So because it's quite a small film, really, it's just kind of like let's throw these um absolutely dangerous men into like these silly costumes and let them fight. But
Yeah.
then the sort of reference points you mentioned make it feel a lot more like all encompassing than it actually is, which is very, very cool.
Yeah. And the set itself is pretty cool too, even though it feels like the production design you actually feel like it's a stage almost.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel like whereas your next film is, you know,
yeah,
you actually are in a setting. This feels more like it's I don't know, confined
yeah,
in a way like the whole world is just in this like one space. But I was very impressed with the production design and just the fights themselves, and the intensity obviously too. So
yeah. Well, that's a Shawbro staple for sure. Both the like studio sets that are actually like turned into these sort of really beautiful landscapes, and to kind of make the most out of very little. But at the same
mhm.
time, obviously, what you come for is that just absolute intense fight scenes. And yeah,
Insane.
we can
Yeah.
talk all day about how it's like, you know, pulling from all this, or it's actually like makes you feel like a child. But at the end of the day, it's just the action's exhilarating, and there's no really other way to put it. Because I watched it again, obviously last night, and it was the
Mm-hmm.
second time I'd seen it. So I went into it being like, okay, I know I loved it, but I want to be reminded why I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come to that third act where it's just non-stop 20 minutes of just full out insanity. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what it's all about.
And it's a little bit Shakespearean too, in terms of what happens with Junko. And there's a little bit of a turn where I was like, oh, this kind of feels like Macbeth, or I don't know. Strangely, it felt um, like Hamlet with Ophelia, or just very, I don't know. Maybe I'm elevating it a bit too much, but this is how my brain works, Cormac. I'm sorry.
Amy, I give it 5 stars, so no one's
So
elevating it too much around here.
okay, so that is Five Elements Ninjas, which is a great introduction. Me speaking as someone who has no experience, I really,
Yeah,
really enjoyed it, and it prepared me for Cormac's next one, which is Millionaires Express from '86 by Sammo Hung. This is also called Shanghai Express, though, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Although that
yeah.
obviously could be very easily confused with the um Dietrich
The
film
Dietrich.
of the same name, yeah. So
Yeah.
can see why they changed that for us guys over here.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, can you sum that one up as if I had never seen it, or try to?
Yeah, well, Millionaires Express. It's basically a Western kung fu film. It's Sammo Hung doing
Mm-hmm.
doing his. Do we say Western or do we say Eastern? Because this would be his take on that genre, but he's from the East. So this is Sammo Hung's Western epic, and it starts off like a snow western, it ends like a spaghetti western, and then has everything else, including the kitchen sink in between.
Yeah, and it starts out like I love how Cormac described it, because at first I was like, is this the right movie?
Mm,
Because you said it was like Snow Western meets Looney Tunes.
yeah,
So I thought of Tarantino again with Hateful Eight in the snow, and then but it's so silly,
it
like
is.
it's very like almost like Three Stooges also, where yeah, how would you even, so I mean this was intentional, right? Because they were using a bunch of, like, everybody was known, right? These were like the who's who of kung
Yeah,
fu.
yeah, it's basically a murderer's row of like kung fu legends.
Right.
Um,
All in one place.
yeah, but yeah, it's very much intentional. Sammo Hung is known for his more sort of comedic bent. I mean, I don't know what the most polite way is to put it, but he's definitely rotund for your kung fu stars. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think in this one he's actually a little slimmer than his wider self would usually be, but even just the sight of little Samuel running about doing his stunts is sort of half the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a little bull in a china shop sometimes, the way he just huffs and puffs and uh, breathes his way about, sort of moves his whole weight about. Um, it's really something that has to be seen to be believed sometimes, but he is very much like a personality unto himself. So obviously Samuel directed, he stars as well, but one of Samuel's strengths I feel is he doesn't really shine the spotlight too hard on himself. As you mentioned, like this is a very much an ensemble piece, so
Yes.
everyone gets their chance to shine, which is something I love because they all get their little 2 minutes in the sun, and then yeah, it just gets crazier and crazier until that last 10 minutes when
Mm-hmm.
they all just go nuts.
I don't know if you've ever seen the film It's a Mad Men, Mad Mad World.
No, I haven't seen it. I know what it is.
Okay. That is also what I thought of.
Hmm.
That and that's like a big Stanley Kramer production where he had like a lot of famous comedians in the cast. So that was definitely like an ensemble. Like, I mean, Sid Caesar, Jonathan Winters, Spencer Tracy's in it. Phil Silver. There's a ton of famous people, right? And it's a gigantic cast, and they're all like trying to get somewhere to get this like fortune, and they're like racing against each other. But I mean, that kind of has this energy, or like maybe Murder on the Orient Express as well, kind of like an Agatha Christie um thing where it's like a group of people all interacting, and you kind of are just overwhelmed. Like there's no main character. It's
No, it's basically an excuse just to take all this money from like the Hong Kong studios and hire every single like icon at once and just put them all in, whether it makes sense or not, which is just, it's absolute carnage, but we love it.
So this one compared to the other one, which one do you love more, would you say?
It's an interesting one because I,
Even though they're very different.
yeah, they're hard to compare, and I've only seen Ninjas once, and I still kind of hold it as like the cream of the crop. Plus, it's kind of got like that sort of almost nostalgic factor because that one was so, incremental to me loving this genre as a whole. But then within the past 2 years, I've seen Millionaire's Express 5 times. So
Okay, so
that one just brings me a lot of joy. Just
mhm.
the carnage of it is very, oh, I was going to say cathartic there, but it's not cathartic. It's just contagious. Yeah.
So it has like a sense of joy
Yeah.
for you.
Like, don't get me wrong. It's a bit of a mess. It's all over the place. And it's kind of just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. But it's never not fun. And it's just insanity that never ends. And I never wanted to end.
And these two, so I don't know if your stance is like incredibly strong on this because I know this is a touchy subject for most, but when I asked Cormac subbed or dubbed, he was like subbed. But a lot of people feel like dubbed allows you to pay attention to the action more because you're not reading, or that, like it enables you to focus on something other than what's being said. But what is your opinion on this? I know that you wanted me to watch them sub, but what is your opinion just in general on this, since
Yeah,
they're all going to be that way?
well, maybe I'm a weirdo, but I watch most things with subs anyway, just to kind of
Yeah.
get the most and pick most things up because I feel like you maybe lose 5% of the film if you're not understanding everything they say. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not really a specific thing to Hong Kong cinema or foreign cinema in general. I'm just kind of a stickler for this kind of thing. But I know some people would be adamantly, no, you're not watching it um, dubbed because that's just kind of taking the hand. But then you get the sort of camp that's like, well, they're already absurd and, you know, who's going here for reality's sake anyway? So you might as well just up the camp and just make it even more of like a Midnight Madness kind of vibe. But I think honestly, you can't get too religious about one or the other. They both have their strengths for sure.
Well, and I will say I started Five Elements Ninjas in dubbed, and I was like, I can't do this
Yeah.
because it was so silly.
Yeah.
Um, it actually reminded me of that Kung Pao movie, this
Okay.
spoof movie, and I was like, I can't do this. It same thing happened to me with The Great Silence.
Hmm.
And then it happens a lot with spaghetti westerns or like Italian exploitation, where if it's I realized that even with like horror films too, where it's like people had different accents,
Yeah.
like within the cast themselves. So it's not like everybody was speaking one language. They were all speaking different ones sometimes. So I don't know, dub just tends to take me out unless it's like Cowboy Bebop or something,
Yeah,
where it's just I'm in a different frame of mind than like watching real people.
it's definitely distracting, but um, you mentioned like the Italian sort of horrors and things like that, like the giallos, a lot of them will be dubbed.
Jello.
But then
Hmm.
at the same time, they're very much just sort of heightened reality anyway. So it's kind of you're not really going there for any sort of realism anyway. So
Hmm.
you can forgive it more for that kind of thing. But if you
Yeah.
have the option, I suppose, to not get distracted, then I would always go for the subs every time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel you. I'm with you, but I know that like I've heard people debate this quite passionately. But my brother is someone who he'll put subtitles on like for anything. I
Yeah.
mean, like we just watched Succession a couple of nights ago, and we had it on for that just because they talk so fast, and you don't want to miss any of that stuff because it's just like
Yeah, well,
rich dialogue.
yeah, I was gonna say, especially like that where, the dialogue is the juice, so you can't be missing that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So Millionaires Express, Sammo Hung. I feel like you tackled two important directors to martial arts films slash kung fu, and definitely read Cormac's reviews because his writing is spectacular. I almost always comment on Cormac's. They are also the ideal length for me, I have to say, because it's always like I tried to do this myself. Sometimes I get carried away where you don't have to scroll, and Cormac's are like exactly. You don't have ever have like lengthy. You have like one or two.
No, which I don't even know how conscious that is. It's just sort of
Mm.
timekeeping, not
Mm-hmm.
wanting to get ahead of myself because as soon as I get two or three paragraphs deep, I can easily just keep going, and no one wants that. No one wants
Yeah,
that,
that's how I feel.
especially not me. So yeah, that's not really a creative, choice. It's more just, to keep my own sanity, which is always preferably, I find.
The not to say that I wouldn't want to keep reading because when you did the Decalogue,
Mhm.
yours were a little bit longer, and I remember I always read them after I finished each entry, and that was really nice. But I feel like the only time that it's like really long is if you're getting personal, as opposed to more analytical of the film itself. It's like this is how it moved me, and then that makes it that way. So yeah, definitely have to check it out. Check out Cormac's writing. I told him at the beginning of this that my new entry for from the best film you've never seen, which here for those of you that are watching, my pick this week is from director Richard Kelly, who chose Fearless. It is directed by Peter Weir. It is actually a movie that I read in this book that Peter Weir loves when people love it because he's so known for Dead Poet Society, Witness, Truman Show. So if somebody comes up to him and they're like, "Oh, I loved Fearless," he's like, "Oh, really?" Because it's like more of a deep cut for him. Um, so definitely check out that movie, Fearless. I just watched it again this morning, and it's stars Jeff Bridges. It's got a great cast: Benicio del Toro, Rosie Perez, um, John Turturro. It's about a plane crash and like the survivors who live through it, how they process what happened. It's really good. I don't know if you have a Peter Weir favorite, Cormac, but
Ooh, good
putting you on
question.
the spot.
That very much has put me on the spot because now my mind's like completely gone blank, and I'm like, what all did he
You're like,
make?
what did he direct?
What did he direct? I know you said
Uh,
Dead Poet Society.
uh-huh.
What did you like? Don't know.
Picnic at Hanging Rock. He's
Yeah,
a, he's
okay.
done a lot of Australian stuff. Gallipoli,
Yeah,
with Mel Gibson.
well, Hanging Rock is an absolute banger, so that would definitely have to be up there.
Yeah, that's a vibe film. I
Yeah,
don't normally do well with those, but that one is good.
very much one that you watch it and you're like, hmm, and then you go to sleep and then you're like, okay, this is all I can ever think about.
Yeah, not am I going to disappear one day? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like where did they go? And it's never solved. Spoiler alert. I'm doing my own spoiler alert on my show, but it's like it's a dreamy movie where you just get lost in it and then you feel like you're lost yourself afterwards.
yeah,
Pretty good.
haunting,
Haunting. Yeah.
haunting.
Cormac, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. And I hope that you all follow him and watch these crazy movies. Even if you are as ignorant as I am, I think that you will have good, clean fun. We'll see you at the movies.